The photograph was beautiful, simple, intimate. At 58 years old, she refused to disappear. While other women her age might have quietly accepted invisibility, she stood out like a flame in the dark. Platinum blonde hair cut short and confident, oversized designer sunglasses perched on her nose even indoors, statement jewelry that clinked softly with every movement. Her wardrobe was a rebellion against every expectation society had for women her age. Bold prints, vibrant colors, dresses that celebrated rather than concealed. She wasn't trying to look younger. She was trying to look alive. And she was. Welcome to Crime Obsession. A huge thank you to my subscribers for your continued support as we grow. We are dedicated to bringing you the best told and untold crime stories every single day. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's begin. Beneath the bold exterior lived a heart that had been broken more times than she cared to count. The divorce at 42 that left her questioning everything she thought she knew about love. The relationship at 47 that promised forever but delivered 18 months of excuses. The man at 53 who loved her right up until the moment he decided he loved someone else more. Each heartbreak had carved something away from her, not her hope exactly, but her certainty that hope would ever be rewarded. Her friends tried to understand. They really did. But after the third or fourth relationship ended in tears over wine at her kitchen table, she could see it in their eyes, that mixture of pity and exhaustion, the unspoken question of why she kept trying, why she kept believing. Some suggested she focus on herself, on her hobbies, on being content alone. As if contentment was the same as happiness. As if wanting love at 58 was somehow desperate or undignified. So she stopped talking about it as much. She stopped calling her friends after every disappointing first date. She stopped asking for advice about men who were probably just wasting her time. Instead, she turned to the one place where her life still felt celebrated, where her existence still mattered, where her voice could still be heard, her social media. She posted everything. Photos from her morning walks, thoughts about books she was reading, snapshots from her travels to places she'd saved up to visit alone. Each post was a declaration. I am here. I am living. I refuse to fade quietly into the background of my own life. Her followers loved her for it. Hundreds of people who liked her updates, commented on her photos, sent her messages of encouragement and admiration. Online, she wasn't a divorced woman approaching 60 with a history of failed relationships. She was vibrant, interesting, worthy of attention. But late at night, after she'd posted her carefully curated moments of joy and watched the likes roll in, she'd lie in bed and feel the weight of what was missing. All those people celebrating her life from a distance, and not one person lying beside her. Not one person to turn to in the darkness and whisper her fears to. Not one person who chose her, every single day, above all others. She didn't want to be alone anymore. She didn't want to manufacture joy for an audience of strangers, while her heart ached for something real. She wanted someone who would be proud to stand beside her, someone who would love her boldness instead of being intimidated by it, someone who would celebrate her as loudly, as publicly, as joyfully as she wanted to celebrate them. She wanted to post a photo and write, "This is us. This is my person. This is the love I never stopped believing in." She didn't know that when she finally got that chance, when she finally found someone who seemed worthy of that celebration, that single act of sharing her joy would be the last thing she'd ever do. That the man who made her believe again would be the same man who would make sure she never posted anything ever again. But that moment was still months away. Right now, she was just a woman scrolling through her phone before bed, liking other people's couple photos, double-tapping engagement announcements, commenting heart emojis on wedding pictures, and wondering when it would finally be her turn. She was still hoping, still believing, still dangerously, desperately ready to trust one more time. She booked the ticket on impulse. After 58 years of playing it safe, of waiting for permission, of putting everyone else first, she decided that she deserved something beautiful. The French Riviera. Solo. No apologies, no explanations. Just her, the Mediterranean sun, and the freedom to rediscover who she was beyond the heartbreak. The resort was everything the photos promised and more. Turquoise water stretched endlessly toward the horizon, palm trees swayed in the warm breeze, and the air itself seemed to whisper possibility. She felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. On her second evening, as golden light painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, she found herself at the poolside bar, a glass of champagne in hand, her platinum blonde hair catching the sunset glow. That's when she saw him. He was younger, perhaps in his early 30s, with a smile that could disarm anyone from across a room. His textured hair framed a face that seemed sculpted for charm, and when his eyes met hers, something shifted. He didn't look through her the way so many did when they saw a woman her age. He looked at her. Really looked. Like she was the only person who existed in that moment. He approached with an easy confidence that never crossed into arrogance. His opening line wasn't smooth or rehearsed, just genuine. He complimented not her appearance but her energy, the way she seemed to radiate contentment sitting there alone. They talked for hours. About travel, about dreams deferred and dreams still possible, about the courage it takes to choose yourself. He listened with an intensity that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in decades. The connection was magnetic, undeniable. He had this way of making her laugh until her sides ached, of asking questions that showed he actually cared about the answers. When she mentioned her love of lavender, he insisted they take a sunset walk through the fields the next day. When she expressed her passion for authentic French cuisine, he knew a tiny bistro where the locals ate, tucked away from the tourist crowds. Those next days blurred together in a haze of joy. They strolled hand in hand through endless rows of purple lavender, the scent intoxicating, the moment perfect. They shared intimate dinners on candlelit terraces overlooking the glittering Mediterranean, where the food was exquisite but somehow secondary to the conversation. He told her stories that made her feel like she was the protagonist of her own romantic film. She found herself laughing in ways she'd forgotten she could, feeling lighter than she had in years, maybe ever. But there was something. Just a small thing, barely worth mentioning. When she pulled out her phone to capture a particularly stunning sunset with him in the frame, he gently stepped aside. "I'm not really a photos guy," he said with that disarming smile. "I'm kind of old-fashioned that way. I prefer to live the moment rather than document it." It struck her as refreshing, even noble. In a world obsessed with digital validation, here was a man who valued authentic presence. "Besides," he added, his voice warm, "I'm pretty private. Social media, all that stuff, it's just not for me. I'd rather keep special moments between us." She rationalized it instantly. He was deep. Intentional. Not shallow like the guys who lived for likes and followers. This was maturity, she told herself. This was real. When her vacation ended, the goodbye felt impossible. But he promised this wasn't an ending. They exchanged numbers, social media profiles, well, hers anyway, since he didn't have any active accounts, which he explained as a lifestyle choice. "Too much noise," he said. "I want to focus on what's real." And he kept his promise. The video calls started that very night. Late-night conversations that stretched until dawn. Passionate messages that arrived at unexpected moments, making her heart race like she was 20 again. Within weeks, he flew to visit her. Then she flew to him. The distance became irrelevant because the connection felt so powerful, so rare, so worth fighting for. She posted about her trips, about her happiness, about feeling alive again, but she never posted about him. She'd type captions, select photos, then delete them before hitting share. She told herself it was respect for his boundaries. Love required compromise, didn't it? And if keeping their relationship offline was what he needed to feel comfortable, wasn't that a small price to pay for what they had? Looking back, she would never remember the exact moment the red flags started appearing. She only remembered the feeling of being seen, of being wanted, of finally believing that love had found her after all those years of waiting. The conversation happened 3 months into their relationship, over dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant. He reached across the table, took her hand, and spoke with that gentle firmness she'd come to recognize. "I need to be honest with you about something," he said, his eyes serious. "I really despise social media. The whole culture of it. I know you love sharing your life online, and I respect that about you, but I need our relationship to stay private. Off the internet completely." She felt her stomach tighten. Her phone was her diary, her scrapbook, her way of celebrating life's beautiful moments with the people she cared about. She'd been dying to post about him, to shout from the digital rooftops that she'd finally found someone. Her fingers had hovered over the post button dozens of times, crafting the perfect caption, selecting the best photo, only to delete it all at the last second out of respect for his earlier comments about privacy. "I'm not trying to control you," he continued, squeezing her hand. "I just value what we have too much to turn it into content. Can you understand that?" She nodded, swallowing the disappointment. Love requires compromise, she told herself. Not everything needs to be public. Maybe this is what mature love looks like. Real intimacy, not performed for an audience. But the compromise felt heavier than she'd expected. She'd type out captions late at night, "Finally found my person," with a heart emoji, her finger hovering over the post button before deleting every word. She'd scroll through her friends' feeds, seeing their relationship milestones celebrated, their partners proudly displayed, and feel a strange hollowness. She told herself she was being shallow, that she was better than needing external validation. Meanwhile, other things began to surface. Small things. Individually, they meant nothing. When she asked about his work, he'd say consulting with a vague wave of his hand. Business consulting? Financial? Technology? The details shifted depending on the conversation. Sometimes he worked with startups, other times with established corporations. She'd press gently for specifics, and he'd deflect with charm. "It's boring technical stuff, baby. I don't want to put you to sleep talking about spreadsheets and strategy meetings." She'd laugh it off. Not everyone loved their job enough to discuss it in detail. His past relationships followed a similar pattern. He'd been engaged once, he mentioned casually. "She was unstable," he explained. "Accused me of things I never did. It destroyed me. Another girlfriend had been manipulative, another couldn't handle my success." Always the victim, always the one who'd suffered. She found herself feeling protective of him, grateful that she wasn't like those other women who'd failed to appreciate him. The social media absence went deeper than she'd initially realized. It wasn't that he was inactive. He didn't exist online. No old Facebook profile set to private. No dormant Instagram account. No LinkedIn for his supposed consulting career. "I deleted everything years ago," he explained. "Fresh start. Clean break from all that digital toxicity." It seemed extreme, but she admired what she interpreted as conviction. Then there were the photos. At restaurants, when other diners took group shots or couples snapped selfies, he'd grow tense. His jaw would tighten almost imperceptibly. Once, when a waiter offered to take their picture, he declined so quickly it bordered on rude. "I just want to enjoy the moment with you," he'd say, kissing her hand. "Not document it for strangers." Every time she pulled out her phone, even to show him something funny, she noticed how he'd shift in his seat, angling his face away. At a friend's birthday party, she tried to include him in a group photo. He disappeared to the bathroom just as the camera came out. It happened again at a gallery opening. And again at a wedding. Her friends wanted to meet him, at least over video call. "I'm old-fashioned," he'd say. "I want to meet them in person, do it right." But something always came up. A work emergency. A family obligation. A migraine. The excuses accumulated, but she made excuses for the excuses. He was busy. He was thoughtful. He wanted everything to be perfect. She mentioned her concerns once, carefully. He looked wounded. "Do you not trust me? After everything we've shared?" The guilt hit immediately. She was being paranoid, insecure, letting her past disappointments poison something beautiful. So she pushed the doubts down deep, buried them under the weight of how special he made her feel when they were alone. "Love requires compromise," she repeated like a mantra. This was just the price of privacy. A small sacrifice for something real. She had no idea how high that price would actually be. The proposal happened on a cliff overlooking the sea at sunset, just the two of them and the sound of waves crashing below. He got down on one knee, pulled out a ring that caught the fading light, and asked her to be his wife. She said yes through tears of joy, her heart so full she thought it might burst. This was it. After all the years of waiting, of disappointment, of wondering if her chance had passed, here it was. Her forever. Before she could even process the moment, before the tears had dried on her cheeks, he pulled her close and whispered against her hair. "Let's keep this just ours for now. No posting, okay? I want to savor this before the world rushes in." She nodded against his chest, dizzy with happiness, already compromising before she'd fully registered what she was agreeing to. That night, alone in her hotel room while he took a business call, she stared at her phone. Her fingers trembled over the keyboard. She typed, "I said yes," with a ring emoji. Selected a photo of just the ring on her finger, his face carefully cropped out. Stared at it for 5 full minutes. Then deleted it all. She sent private messages instead, to her sister, her best friend, her daughter. Quick texts, he proposed. "I'm engaged. Tell you more soon." Their excited responses felt hollow somehow, contained in private threads instead of celebrated publicly. The wedding planning began immediately, and with it came his explicit rules. Intimate ceremony. Minimal guests. No photographers beyond the officiant's wife who'd take a few shots for the legal paperwork. No social media whatsoever. No public record of their union. "I want it to be sacred," he explained, cupping her face in his hands. "Just about us and our commitment. Not a performance for people who don't even matter." She wanted to argue that her friends mattered, that her online community had supported her through divorce and heartbreak and deserved to celebrate this joy with her. But she didn't. She told herself he was right. A wedding wasn't about the audience. It was about the vows. The ceremony took place at a small private chateau in the French countryside. The handful of witnesses included his business associate, a man who barely made eye contact and left immediately after, and a few distant relatives of hers who'd agreed to travel. It was beautiful in its simplicity. The late afternoon light streaming through old windows, flowers she'd arranged herself, his hand steady in hers as they exchanged vows. But even as she said, "I do," even as he slipped the ring on her finger, she felt it. A growing unease that she couldn't quite name. Her phone sat in her clutch bag, burning like a secret. Around them, other people would be posting their wedding days, sharing their joy, creating memories they could revisit forever. She would have nothing. Just the imperfect shots from the officiant's wife, taken quickly and awkwardly, his face somehow always slightly blurred or turned away. During the reception, a quiet dinner for 8 at the chateau, her fingers kept twitching toward her phone. Muscle memory. The instinct to capture this, to document it, to share it. Every time someone laughed, every time he kissed her, every beautiful moment, her hand would move unconsciously toward her bag. She'd stop herself, remind herself of her promise, push the urge down. "You look distracted," he whispered during dinner, his hand suddenly tight on her knee under the table. "No, I'm perfect," she lied. "This is perfect." But it wasn't. Something felt wrong about celebrating the happiest day of her life in complete silence. About having no way to tell the world that she'd finally found her person. About the fact that, to anyone looking at her social media, she was still single, still searching, still alone. A relationship isn't built on public validation, she told herself again, the mantra wearing thin. It's built on the quiet moments only we share. On trust. On respect. On compromise. She watched him across the table, laughing with his business associate, looking relaxed and happy. He caught her eye and winked, and her heart softened. This was what mattered. Not the posts or the likes or the comments from people she hadn't seen in years. This man. This commitment. This love. Still, when they cut the cake and he turned away just as someone reached for their phone, she felt it again. That whisper of doubt she couldn't quite silence. Later, alone for a moment in the chateau's powder room, she pulled out her phone. Opened Facebook. Stared at her profile picture, just her, smiling on a beach somewhere, single. She could change it right now. Post something simple. Married my best friend today. That's all. Nothing invasive. Nothing that violated his privacy beyond what any normal couple would share. Her finger hovered over the screen. Then she heard his footsteps in the hall, and she locked her phone, burying it back in her bag. Tomorrow, she told herself. Tomorrow she'd figure out how to balance his need for privacy with her need to share her joy. Tomorrow she'd find a compromise that worked for both of them. She had no way of knowing that by tomorrow, compromise would no longer be an option. The honeymoon suite was everything dreams were made of. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed an impossible view of the Côte d'Azur, where the Mediterranean sparkled like scattered diamonds under the afternoon sun. The private balcony stretched out over the water, white curtains billowing in the salt-tinged breeze. Champagne chilled in a silver bucket. Rose petals traced a path to the enormous bed. It was perfect. They were perfect. Or so she believed. He stepped onto the balcony to take a call, something about a work emergency that couldn't wait even on their honeymoon. She didn't mind. She was floating, drunk on happiness, still trying to process that this was real. That after 58 years of waiting, of hoping, of almost giving up, she'd found him. Her husband. The word felt foreign and wonderful on her tongue. Alone for a moment, she picked up her phone and scrolled through the photos a wedding guest had secretly sent her that morning. There was one that stopped her breath. Both of them caught mid-laugh during the ceremony, his hand on her cheek, her eyes sparkling behind her designer sunglasses. They looked happy. Not posed for the camera happy. Actually, genuinely, radiantly happy. She stared at that photo for a long time. For months, she'd suppressed the urge to share. She'd typed and deleted 1,000 captions. She'd watched her friends celebrate their lives online, while she kept her greatest joy hidden like some shameful secret. She'd compromised her authentic self, buried the part of her that found connection and celebration in sharing life's beautiful moments. All because he'd asked her to. All because she believed that was what love required. But this was different. This wasn't just a boyfriend or a relationship. This was her husband. Her marriage. The culmination of everything she'd hoped for. Didn't she have the right to celebrate that? Didn't their love deserve to exist in the light, not hidden in shadows? Her fingers moved before her mind could stop them. She uploaded the photo. The caption came easily, naturally, from a place of pure joy. Finally found my forever. I love you, baby. She hit post. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Hearts and congratulations flooded in. Friends she hadn't heard from in months suddenly appeared in her notifications, expressing relief and happiness for her. So happy for you. You deserve this. He's handsome. Finally, some good news. The comments piled up, each one a small validation that her joy mattered, that she hadn't been foolish to believe in love again. For the first time in months, she felt like herself. The relief was physical, a weight lifting from her chest. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't erasing herself to make someone else comfortable. She was just a woman, proud and happy, sharing the best day of her life with people who cared about her. She didn't notice how quickly it spread. Her friends shared it. Their friends shared it. The algorithm picked it up, pushing it further. Within minutes, hundreds of people had seen it. Within an hour, thousands. On the balcony, his phone began vibrating. Once. Twice. Then constantly, an angry swarm of notifications. She saw him glance at the screen, saw his entire body go rigid. He answered, and even from inside the suite, she could hear the panic in his voice, though she couldn't make out the words. What she didn't know was that on the other end of that call, his associate was screaming, "You idiot! Your face is all over Facebook. Do you know how many people are looking for you? Do you have any idea what you've done?" He stood frozen on that balcony, phone pressed to his ear, staring at the repost of his wife's photo that had just landed in his messages. His face. Clear, unmistakable, tagged with a location. Already shared 30 times. 60 times. Comments asking questions. Wait, isn't that the guy from? Screenshots being taken. Recognition spreading like wildfire. 7 women across 3 countries were looking at that photo at that exact moment. 7 women who recognized the smile, the charm, the face of the man who'd promised them forever before draining their bank accounts and disappearing. 7 women who now had proof. A name. A location. Evidence. Law enforcement databases were already pinging. Facial recognition software was working. The careful anonymity he'd maintained for years was crumbling in real time. His associate's voice cut through the panic. The post has been shared thousands of times. It's too late to contain. You need to. He hung up. His hands were shaking. His carefully constructed world was collapsing because his wife had committed the unforgivable sin of being proud to be married to him. Because she'd refused to keep their love a secret. Because one moment of her authentic joy had exposed 5 years of calculated deception. Inside the suite, she smiled at her phone, reading another congratulatory comment, completely unaware that she'd just signed her own death warrant. The champagne sat forgotten, warming in its bucket. The rose petals would soon be trampled. And the Mediterranean, so beautiful in the afternoon light, would bear witness to something no honeymoon suite should ever see. He turned from the balcony and walked back inside, his face transformed into something she wouldn't recognize. When he stepped back into the suite, she barely recognized him. The charming smile had vanished, replaced by something cold and feral. His jaw was clenched so tight she could see the muscles twitching. His eyes, which had always looked at her with such warmth, were now wild, darting, the eyes of a cornered animal. His movements were sharp, aggressive, completely unlike the gentleman who'd held her hand through their vows just yesterday. Take it down. His voice shook with barely controlled rage. Right now. Delete it. She looked up from her phone, confusion flooding her features. What? The photo? Why would I? Delete it. He lunged forward, snatching at her phone. She pulled back instinctively, clutching it to her chest. It's just a wedding photo. Why are you acting like this? He grabbed her wrist, his grip painful, desperate. Unlock the phone. Delete the post. Now. Fear spiked through her confusion. This wasn't about privacy preferences or his quirky distaste for social media. Something was deeply, terribly wrong. The man she'd married had disappeared, replaced by this stranger whose panic felt dangerous, unhinged. No. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. She wrenched her arm free, backing toward the balcony. I'm not deleting anything until you tell me what's going on. Why are you so desperate to hide our marriage? Why are you so afraid of people seeing us together? His face twisted with something between fury and desperation. You don't understand what you've done. You've ruined everything. What have I ruined? Our marriage. Her voice rose, years of suppressed frustration suddenly erupting. I've hidden for months. I've compromised everything about myself for you. I posted one photo of our wedding, and you're acting like I've committed a crime. You don't know what you're talking about. He moved toward her again, reaching for the phone. She stepped back, her spine hitting the balcony railing. The Mediterranean stretched out behind her, beautiful and indifferent. Then tell me. Make me understand why. He lunged. Not for the phone this time, but for her, trying to wrestle it from her hands. She twisted away, and they grappled, stumbling across the balcony. Her sunglasses flew off, clattering against the stone. Give me the phone. Get off me. The struggle was brief, frantic, brutal. She fought to keep the phone, to keep her ground, to understand what was happening. He fought with the desperation of a man watching his entire world collapse. His freedom. His future. His carefully constructed lies all unraveling because of one photo, one moment of her authentic joy. And then, in a split second that would replay in his nightmares forever, he made his choice. His freedom mattered more than her life. It had to. He'd come too far, worked too hard, to let it all end because she couldn't follow one simple rule. He shoved her hard. Her eyes went wide with shock and betrayal as she stumbled backward. Her hands released the phone, reaching for something, anything to grab onto. But there was only air and the railing now at her lower back, too low to stop her momentum. She went over. The fall was silent except for the rush of wind. 3 stories down to the stone courtyard below, where rose petals from someone else's celebration scattered in the breeze. He stood frozen at the balcony railing, staring at his hands, at the empty space where his wife had been standing seconds ago. The Mediterranean sparkled behind him, indifferent to what it had just witnessed. Her phone lay at his feet, screen still lit with notifications. More likes, more shares, more comments congratulating a dead woman on finding her forever. He'd chosen. And he could never take it back. His performance was almost convincing. He ran down to the courtyard screaming, his voice raw with what sounded like genuine anguish. Help! Somebody help! My wife! She fell. Resort staff and guests rushed to the scene, finding him cradled over her broken body, tears streaming down his face. It was an accident, he sobbed. She leaned too far over the balcony, looking at the view. I tried to grab her, but I couldn't reach her in time. Oh God, I couldn't save her. The French police arrived within minutes. Initially, they treated it as a tragic honeymoon accident. These things happened, unfortunately. Too much champagne, unfamiliar balconies, a momentary lapse in judgment. The grieving husband was so distraught he could barely speak coherently. They took his statement gently, respectfully, not wanting to add to his trauma. But then they asked about her phone, still clutched in her hand when she fell. They needed to check it as part of their routine investigation. His reaction was immediate and visceral. Why? Why do you need her phone? What does that have to do with anything? The panic in his voice was unmistakable, completely different from his grief moments before. When they mentioned the Facebook post that was still live on her account, he became almost frantic. Take it down. Please, you have to take it down. Detective Laurent Moreau had been investigating deaths for 23 years. He developed an instinct for when something felt wrong, and everything about this husband's behavior was setting off alarm bells. Why was a grieving man more concerned about a social media post than his wife's body? Why the panic about her phone? Moreau ran the husband's image through Interpol databases. What came back made his blood run cold. The name on the passport was an alias. The background he'd provided was completely fabricated. But the face triggered matches across multiple fraud investigations in France, Spain, Italy, and Belgium. The man wasn't a consultant. He was a professional con artist, part of a sophisticated criminal network specializing in romance fraud. They targeted financially stable older women, women who were lonely, hopeful, vulnerable. The operation was meticulous. Fake identities, elaborate backstories, careful grooming techniques designed to exploit emotional need. As the investigation deepened, the pattern emerged with devastating clarity. At least 7 other victims over 5 years. All women between 50 and 65. All financially independent. All swept off their feet by a charming younger man who insisted on extreme privacy. Each one had been systematically drained of money, then discarded. 2 had filed police reports but had no photos, no real name, nothing that could lead to an arrest. 3 others had simply disappeared under circumstances that were never fully explained. The Facebook post was a revelation. It was the first clear photograph law enforcement had ever obtained of him. Within hours of running it through facial recognition systems, connections started forming. Women across Europe were coming forward, recognizing the face in the viral wedding photo. That's him, they said, their voices shaking. That's the man who said he loved me. The testimonies painted a chilling portrait. He was a chameleon, adapting his personality to each victim's needs. To one, he was an adventurous entrepreneur. To another, a sensitive artist. To a third, a wounded soul seeking healing. But the pattern was always the same: intense attention, declarations of love, demands for privacy, and then the systematic exploitation. One survivor, a 62-year-old former teacher from Lyon, wept as she told her story. He made me feel seen for the first time in decades. Then he convinced me to take out a loan to help with his business emergency. 200,000 euros, gone. When I tried to find him, it was like he'd never existed. The irony wasn't lost on Detective Moreau. The very thing the killer had murdered his wife to prevent, public exposure, became the key that unlocked his entire criminal empire. Her final act of joy, that single Facebook post, had done what years of investigation couldn't. She'd exposed him completely. By the time they arrested him, trying to flee the country with yet another fake passport, The evidence was overwhelming. The Facebook post had been shared over 50,000 times. His face was everywhere. There was nowhere left to hide. The courtroom was suffocating, packed to capacity with a public and media that had become obsessed with the case of the bride who died for a digital status update. As the trial unfolded, the air grew heavy with the weight of truth. One by one, a parade of women from across Europe took the stand, survivors of the same predatory charm who had lost their life savings but kept their lives. They looked at the man in the dock, the one who had promised them forever, and saw only a stranger. When her sister stood to read the victim impact statement, the room fell into a haunting silence. She didn't speak of a murder victim. She spoke of the vibrant 58-year-old woman with the platinum hair and the bold laugh, a woman who simply wanted to celebrate her happiness after years of waiting for her turn. She described a heart that was perhaps too generous for a world containing men like him. The prosecution presented a stinging irony that the jury could not ignore. The very thing the husband had killed to prevent, public exposure, was exactly what ensured his downfall. By attempting to bury his identity in the darkness of that balcony, he had inadvertently stepped into the brightest light imaginable. That single Facebook post, the one he had tried to snatch away with a fatal shove, had remained live long enough to become a digital lighthouse, guiding law enforcement straight to his web of lies. The irony wasn't lost on Detective Laurent Moreau. The very thing the killer had murdered his wife to prevent, public exposure, became the key that unlocked his entire criminal empire. Her final act of joy, that single Facebook post, had done what years of investigation couldn't. It had exposed him completely. When the verdict was read, it was swift and absolute, guilty on all counts of fraud, theft, and murder. The sentence of life in prison, without the possibility of parole, felt like a heavy stone being placed over the grave of his freedom. As he was led away in handcuffs, the mask finally slipped. The charming smile and the warm gaze that had promised a French fairy tale were gone, replaced by the cold, hollow stare of a cornered predator. In the aftermath, her family chose not to let the story end in tragedy. They transformed their grief into a shield, establishing a foundation in her name dedicated to helping others recognize the warning signs of predatory relationships. Through their privacy versus secrecy campaign, they now teach the world the critical difference. Privacy is a healthy boundary built on respect, but forced secrecy is a tool of control used by those with something to hide. Today, her story is shared millions of times over, a cautionary tale told at workshops and across the very social media platforms she loved. It forces every person scrolling through a perfect feed to ask the hard questions. Is your partner comfortable with your happiness? Or are they terrified of being seen? She wanted nothing more than to share her joy. In a final powerful twist of fate, her voice was not silenced by the fall. That original Facebook post remains on her memorial page, the comments now numbering in the thousands, a digital testament that her spirit, once hidden by a man of lies, now echoes far louder than he ever could have imagined.